Hello and welcome to another video by Day Night Gaming. In this video we're going to be reviewing the action RPG known as Gauntlet Slayer Edition. Now before we begin, please let me preface by stating my own personal bias toward the Gauntlet intellectual property. I've been a long-time fan ever since I played the original Gauntlet coin-op machine in the arcades back when I was a child. And honestly, I was never really good at the game, but I had a lot of fun. And I remember back then I could sink endless quarters into the machine, and I had a blast doing so. Now for a little bit information on this game, it was an arcade coin-op dungeon crawling video game from the top-down perspective that could support up to 4 players, with each player controlling a different class, either the warrior, the wizard, the valkyrie, or the elf. And then shortly after, Gauntlet 2 came out, and that allowed for players to have multiple of the same character. So you could have 2 elves or 4 valkyries, instead of being forced to play one of each of them. So the way they differentiated them was by color. So it could be one player being a green elf and the other player being the red elf. And then later on, I remember purchasing Gauntlet for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And while I did have a lot of fun playing it, and I did eventually beat that game, I definitely did not enjoy it as much as I did the arcade version, because the color palette and the animation was not as good as the arcade, which is totally understandable because we're comparing a Nintendo versus an arcade machine. So I would often find myself always wanting to go back to the arcade and playing more, as opposed to playing the Nintendo version at home. And then many years later, I remember hearing about a new arcade game coming out called Gauntlet Legends. And the amazing thing about this is it actually saved your progress. I remember using gold to buy stat increases into my character, and every time I'd go back to the arcade, I would input my name and my code, and I would get to continue on playing from there. And it was really so fun because you could save your character. The local arcade that I played at had a really inviting social community where we would all go and hang out and talk and level up our characters and talk about our adventures. It was really fun. We would share secrets on what walls to break, and yeah, it was an amazing time. So needless to say, I have a very strong emotional attachment to the Gauntlet series of games, especially the arcade versions. So please understand that I do have a biased opinion that could affect the outcome of my review. Now let's talk about Gauntlet Slayer Edition. Now I played this on PC through the Steam platform, and so here's some gameplay. As you can see, it is a top-down dungeon crawler where you basically fight through hordes of enemies while trying to stay alive and proceed to the exit of each level. And while the footage you're seeing is me playing solo, it can be played cooperatively up to 4 players. But sadly, you cannot have any duplicate characters. So at most, you would only have one character playing the elf or one character playing the valkyrie. You could not have any duplicates, which was kind of a bummer, because if multiple people did want to play the same character, well, too bad. Only one version of that character could be in that game. And to be completely honest, this was a major point of contention with my play group, primarily due to the way the game was structured. So each of the characters do play completely different from each other, and because of that, their control schemes were also very different, and that was the biggest problem with this game. So as an example, if I was to play my elf, I would get used to the button layout and the control scheme of that character, and then if I could not play my elf in someone else's session, I would have to switch to a different character and completely relearn how to play from the ground up. Alright, so now I want to go back to my history of playing Gauntlet. Now, Gauntlet 1 also had the restriction where each character can only be played by one character and you could not have any duplicates. Now, while all the characters had their own strengths, they didn't entirely play different from each other. To give you an example, the warrior had the strongest melee, the wizard had the strongest magical potion, the valkyrie had the highest defense, and the elf moved faster. But the core gameplay was the same between all the characters. Move, attack, throw potion. So if you were to play a different character, you weren't forced to relearn how to play. At the same time, the developers knew that people wanted to play the same characters, so when Gauntlet 2 came out shortly after, they allowed duplicate characters with different colors, and that remained all the way through Gauntlet Legends as far as I know. So when it came to Gauntlet Slayers, the version that I'm currently playing and reviewing for this video, within my group group of buddies, we all became quite frustrated with not being able to freely choose whoever we wanted to play. So if we played with a full complement of 4 players, we were bound to have at least one player who wasn't going to have fun in that play session. And when it comes to playing video games, the core aspect should be fun and enjoyment. Next, I want to discuss how punishing the game can be. Now, please keep in mind I'm talking about how punishing the game can be and not about how difficult the game can be. And while they might seem like the same topic, they are actually different in my opinion. So here I just died, as you can see. And the reason why I died was because the way health works in this game. Getting hit in this game can cause a large amount of damage to your character. And whenever you get into a combat area, the game will forcefully lock you into that engagement. And you only have that limited play field in order to maneuver. So eventually you get your back put against the wall and you have to make a decision on how you're going to prevent incoming damage. Because when you take damage, it's very punishing. As in, a large chunk of your health pool gets depleted. You get harshly punished for making the wrong decision or failing to react to oncoming damage by dodging or evading. Whereas the previous Gauntlet titles wasn't necessarily about playing perfectly, because you could take multiple hits in quick succession and still be alive, depending on how large your health pool was. Now, in the original Gauntlet arcade machines, your health would continuously deplete very slowly, which basically put a level of urgency onto the game. The faster you can get through a stage, the less health you would lose due to timer running. So you're still incentivized into running fast, but at least enemies wouldn't 1 or 2 shot you from full health to dead for making a mistake, like failing to dodge at the right time. So that's what I mean by the game is punishing. Not necessarily difficult, but definitely punishing. Now, I must state that I did not play the game on the hardest difficulty. I played it on normal. And with that in mind, from the first mission to the final mission, I probably only died maybe about 10 times at most. But that's because the game provides more than ample enough amount of food which will heal your character. So even though you do get punished for making mistakes, at least you can quickly heal that back up. So once again, this is about punishment and not difficulty. So as you can see here, I've traveled backwards toward the start of the mission to show you how much food is placed in the levels. As you can see, it's more than enough to get through each encounter. The point that I could go backwards after each sortie and heal up from the food that I didn't take the first time around. And this showcases a very prime example of the game being overtly punishing as opposed to how difficult the game is. Basically, I wish the monsters didn't hit as hard as they did, but at the same time I wish there was less food available to offset that. Now I want to discuss the RPG elements of the game. As you can see here, like I stated before, I beat the game on normal difficulty, and I beat it on my elf. And after defeating the final boss, I had a surplus of 107k, beyond the things that I've already purchased to advance my character. Now, this does not mean I purchased everything. I'm going to show you what I was able to afford. So I did not get the final weapon. In fact, I only used the basic tier weapon that you start with. And please keep in mind that if you buy a new weapon, that doesn't necessarily make your character stronger. It just changes the ability that they can use on their hotbar. Also, please keep in mind that you do not have to purchase every tier along the way to the highest tier. You can buy the highest tier outright. But at the same time, once again, please keep in mind that it is a large amount of gold investment. So now I'm going to move over to talismans. As you can see, I purchased the highest tier talisman and I skipped the middle tier. And I was able to purchase a ghost orb relic. Now I'm going to upgrade it so you can see how quickly money disappears. So remember, I had 107,000. I upgraded to level 2. And now I only have 71k left, and now I'm going to upgrade it to rank 3, and now I'm left over with 17k. And remember, I already pre-purchased the tier 1 part of that relic. So gold really disappears quick. And remember, I've already beaten the game at this point. So it really decentivizes wanting to play other characters while you're leveling up, because it takes so long in order to get enough stockpiled gold in order to upgrade. And that decentivizes wanting to play other characters when you're playing with your friends as well. If someone wanted to play the elf and I can't play the elf, that means I'm forced to play a different character, and I'd start over with a low amount of gold. As you can see here, gold is separate from each character. And I'd have to go and repurchase things. I don't even get to keep the talisman that I maxed out on my elf, which is really sad because it decentivized me from wanting to experiment and purchase things, because everything is so expensive that I had to really be frugal with what I wanted to purchase and be very focused on things, which also means that I didn't want to play other characters unless I was forced to. As you can see here, I was forced to play my warrior because a couple of sessions one of my buddies wanted to play elf, so I purchased some things, but yeah, I didn't really buy too much. And as you can see here, my gold is very low because I just didn't want to play a different character and start over and start regrinding the gold. Maybe if gold was shared between all your characters, then maybe it might be okay, but sadly that's not the case, and every character of yours has their own gold pool and their own gear pool. Alright, so now with all that out of the way, I'm gonna move on to the review portion of the game. To be honest, I can't fully recommend this game unless the purchaser is a die-hard fan of the Gauntlet IP, or they're really big on dungeon crawlers. And from a solo player aspect, it's not very fun, very uninteresting, but it can be fun if you're playing with a group of buddies, if you have some friends you can play co-op with. That's where a majority of my entertainment came from with this game. But there is the caveat of not being able to play the same character, and that can cause some frustration when it comes to the multiplayer aspect of Gauntlet Slayers. And to be completely honest, I probably wouldn't pay more than $10 for this game. So if you could find it on sale under $10, and it's probably worth picking up for, you know, a good 6 hours of fun or less. And while I'm sure there are people who can replay this game over and over again, I for one probably won't return to this game now that I've beaten it, because to me it was really lackluster at best. So yeah, that's basically my review. Like I said, I can't really recommend this game unless it's heavily discounted. And even then, like I said, I can't really recommend it unless you're a die-hard fan. Thank you, hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider hitting that thumbs up, hitting that subscribe button, and ringing that bell for future notifications on videos that I might be posting in the future. And in case you're interested in supporting the channel even more, I do have a merch website at streamlabs.com/DNGdangerous/merch. And until next time, take care, goodbye.